As far as we have known the Indian economy, there have been a lot of different problems that we had to go through. There have been a lot of different problems that we had to bear while the Indian economy was developing in time. Now, when we understand that the developing economy, or rather when it is a developing economy, we already figured out what exactly needs to be done, or what are the figures, or what are the things that has to be considered while we are going through development issues, or rather when any economy is supposed to be developed. Now, when we speak about development, we understand that development is not just one department that has to be developed. It has to be a cumulative, a collusive income, or rather, it should be a collusive effort of all the departments that are running the country, and each and every department should be developed in such a way that it adds up to the development of the economy. Now, understanding this as the base part of it, what exactly were the development issues in each of the department is something that we are going to learn about right now. So let's start with the meaning and rather certain definitions or certain context material related to development issues first of all. Now, despite the fact that Indian economy has been attaining praiseworthy progress in the terms of growth rate, India is still considered as a low income developing economy. We are very well aware about the fact that despite the worthy progress and the kind of growth that we are having right now, we still have been considered, or rather we are still considered as low income developing country. It's still not a developed country as of now, but we are still experiencing that it's a low income developing country here. A quarter of country's population lives below poverty line. That means 1/4 of the country's population is still below poverty line. That's the state of our country as of now. Poverty is not only acute but a chronic problem in India. Now, the difference between the acute and chronic problem refers to acute is something which is small that we speak about. Chronic is something which is long going, or rather we can speak about this is an everlasting problem. So when we speak about poverty here, poverty is not just a small problem that we say, or usually when we speak about, okay, this is a small problem, this is something very, very small, it can be handled easily. It is not just that problem that we have in India, but it is also a small and a chronic problem which makes it a big deal for a country like India itself, whereby 1/4 of the population, so if we take around 125 billion people here, somewhere around 33.33 crore people, or rather 33.33 billion people are still under the poverty line. That's a huge number to deal with. And as a country, if you have to uplift yourself, you have to first start by building up something for these 33.33 billion people and raising them to a level whereby their income would be stable, they would be having good food, education, medical expenses, all the services that are required or that are enjoyed by an upper middle class family. So whatever lower class people are there, we need to bring them up in such a way that that will help in developing the country at a faster rate. Now, how that can be done is something that we'll be dealing with in the next part. At the same time, there exist unutilized or underutilized human and natural resources. Along with poverty being one of the major problems, there are certain issues that we have to deal with. Now, what are those certain issues? There are certain unutilized or underutilized human and natural resources. There exists a problem, or rather there exists a situation whereby our human efficiency has gone down to such a level, or the utilization of human efficiency in an effective way has gone down so much that we are not able to utilize the manpower that we have in an effective way. The natural resources that we have in an effective way are not even utilized, they are not even touched. So all these stones are still unturned, and that has to be turned in order to change the development phase of India in the first place. Now, it is therefore quite important to understand the basic issues of development of an economy which is one of the poor and at the same time one of the fastest growing economies in the world. If you look at certain situations here, if you look at India as a pie diagram, let me just draw it as a pie diagram here so that you will understand what exactly I'm trying to tell you. So if this is one of the India's situation whereby this much is still in the poverty line or below the poverty line, we need to understand what are the basic issues that India is facing. There may be different issues. We need to address each and every issue that we have in order to make sure that it is closed once and for all. So basically, it is not just that we know this issue is there, but there is nothing that has been done to complete or rather eradicate that issue in the first place. So in order to analyze this thing, we need to first figure out what needs to be done, or rather what are the issues that we're facing. We can list them down, we can jot them down, and after listing them down, we need to figure out what are the alternative sources that can be utilized to either eradicate this issue, or rather what is the resolution that can be given to eradicate this issue. So it's an eradication of issue which can be done by either alternate sources or rather providing a resolution for the ongoing problem. That's the deal that we have to cut whenever we have to discuss about development of any economy, be it any economy. And why India specifically? Because it is still the fastest growing economy in the world, but at the same time it is poor and low earning capacity, or rather low earning level is one of the, or rather these are the adjectives that are added to the fastest growing economy. That's the irony here. Understand, this is an economy which is growing at a faster rate, but people here are still below the poverty line. People here are still not able to have food of their one time business. People here are still not able to grow their income level to a desired thing, or rather to a desired state. That is the reality of India in the current situation here. We have been dealing with recessions, we've been dealing with so many of financial status, financial issues, that the crunch is now coming upon the people and it is leading them to quit India in the first place. Now, the next part refers to low per capita income. Per capita income. Let us discuss what exactly low per capita income means. Developing economies are noted for existence of low per capita income. Whichever economy we take into consideration, if it is developing, we understand that this concept of low per capita income has been a constant part of all the situations. That means every company or every industry, every economy that has been started, or rather it has been recently started and it is on the verge of reaching the peak, the distance or the roadmap toward it always starts from low per capita income. This is what the first start is, or rather the initial started. But if the country stays at this level itself for a long period of time, that means it is still a developing country. It hasn't been developed and it is going in the backward side. That means people are not earning to the level at what they should be earning in the first place. And hence, because of this, you understand that a low per capita income has to be turned into high per capita income to convert your country status of developing country into a developed country. This is what is required. This is what is needed. Now, the per capita income of India in 2014 was $1,560. This is the per capita, or rather, this was the per capita income as per the status or as per the data of 2014. It may be noted from table 6.8 that in the same year, average per capita gross national income of USA, highly developed country, was 35 times that of India. Highly developed country like USA, the per capita, the gross national income of that specific country was 35 times. Can you imagine? 1560 multiplied by 35. This is the per capita income of USA. To reach this level, imagine the kind of growth India would require in the first place. Imagine the kind of eradication of solutions, or rather eradication of problems. We have so many problems in India: corruptions, bad education system, every other thing which is related to an underdeveloped country, every other thing that is related to putting down the country in such a way. That is the problem, and to eradicate that problem, we need to strive a lot. We need to strive a lot, and that will make sure that whatever solutions that we have will make us reach to this level, whereby at least to reach at 35 times growth rate. So to accelerate that growth rate, what exactly needs to be done is something that has been mentioned in this chapter. Now, it shows that the difference between the level of living of an average American and Indian was quite large and significant. This growth rate of 35 times shows that the level of living an average USA person, average person like you and me, someone who has been earning his bread and butter by daily work, daily job, salaried persons, or something like this. So, average people over there have 35 times higher wealth, higher standard of living as compared to average Indian people like us. So, every or rather even the neighboring country China, a major developing country, has an average of 5 times higher than per capita GNI than India. Imagine the state. A country like China has even 5 times more growth rate as compared to India. That means if 1560 is per capita of India, 5 times of this is the per capita income of China, a developing country. I'm not even saying it's a developed country, it's a highly developing country here. And that country has a per capita growth rate of 5 times as compared to India. Imagine the state where India is lacking behind, or what exactly India needs to do in order to achieve this kind of economic growth, economic status, or rather the increase in the level of economic status. This is what India actually needs. Speaking about more of low per capita income, in case of India, not only the per capita income is low, but the distribution of income is also unequal. So, if this is wealth that has been mentioned here, this has to be distributed equally. That is the term. Alright, this has to be distributed equally amongst the people. But what happens in India? People who are already rich are becoming richer. People who are already poor are becoming more poorer. So, this is the situation. This is the situation whereby we can say that the income, or rather the wealth distribution in India, is completely different, completely haywire. It doesn't even know where exactly they are going through, where exactly they are going forward with. So, rich is becoming richer, poor is becoming poorer, and this is how the situation has been. If at all the situation is not changed, India will soon move to a phase whereby there will be no jobs, there will be complete unemployment, recession will be a part, or rather it will be a major part of Indian economy, and that will lead to a lot of inflation and every other possible outcomes that can have, or rather that can be faced by a bad economy here. So, the unequal distribution of income and wealth makes the problem of poverty one of the critical and acute obstacles in this path towards economic progress. So, if we have to do an economic progress because of this unequal distribution of wealth, the problem of poverty becomes a more delicate problem. It becomes a more obstacle, acute obstacle that we can speak about, a hard obstacle to cover when it comes to the path of economic progress. So, if economic progress has to be done, you need to figure out how exactly you need to be in terms of changing the nature, or rather changing the situation here in an effective way that can lead to growth of Indian economy and not to destruction of it. Table 6.a, the one that we discussed about the per capita income. It shows the per capita gross national income at market price 2014 in US dollars. This is as per 2014. USA had around $55,320 of per capita income. Can you imagine? This is 35 times. India has around 1560 per capita US income as compared to US here. China has around 7520, a highly developing country. Also, China has faced a lot of issues in terms of economy. The corruption is still there. Still, or rather, yet we can see that the growth of China is highly commendable, 7520 per capita income. So, this is the source, or rather, the source has been mentioned from the World Bank or World Development Indicators here. Now, if you have to further discuss, there is a huge dependency of population on agriculture. Why exactly do we see, or why exactly do we say that there is a huge dependency of India's population on agriculture? That's the only source of income that we had, or rather that's one of the oldest source of income that we have. Of course, depending on the kind of geographical nature, geographical situation, and the benefit that we have in terms of the geography of India, agriculture is one of the most important concepts, or rather agriculture is one of the most important sources of income of India. But how well have we been able to convert the traditional methods of agriculture into the recent, or rather technologically advanced methods of agriculture here? If at all we are able to do that thing, imagine the kind of growth that we would have, whereby the human efficiency would be used in such an effective way, and that could also lead to lot of exports. So if India is famous for making spices, we need to cultivate those spices, we need to make those crops, we need to make sure that our agriculture is giving us a lot of exports here. It is making sure that all the agriculture content that we have here, that is being sent out to different countries, that is being exported to different countries. The demand should be created like that. If that is done, only then India will be able to progress, India will be able to prosper in a beneficial way, in an effective way here. Now, occupational distribution of population in India clearly reflects the backwardness of the economy. Whatever occupational distribution is in India, or rather whatever occupational distribution of population is there. So basically the population has been divided into the working categories. Okay, this has been also taken care, or the population, we can say that every population has certain age factor. It may be 18 to 40, it may be 41 to 60, it may be 60 plus. We are just taking this as an example. Okay, now we are taking 60 plus as people who are very much experienced in terms of making businesses, in terms of having knowledge about the business growth, but they are effectively, or rather they are not effective when it comes to execution of it. They can just provide the message. Now decoding that message and making sure that it is the job of these two peoples, these two age category people, to ensure that these two things are implemented in the correct way. And rather we can say that at any given point of time, if experienced people are giving you certain things, you need to inculcate that thing within you and put them into use as per the current need, as per the current requirements. If you still go ahead with the rudimentary thought factors that by this thing can be implemented only in these many situations, you will be completely below the poverty line, and you will make sure that you never develop in that cases. It's you who need to go ahead and figure out how exactly these things can be fit into different situations at any given point of time. It's their job to give us the experience knowledge, but it's our job to go ahead and make sure that that experience can be mixed, or rather can be cultivated with different factors and put into use, and just see on trial and error basis, because those trial and error basis things will only help you to make sure that how exactly you will be going through with all these plans. So, Indian agriculture has come a long way in since independence, with chronic food scarcity given way to grain self-sufficiency despite a 2.5-fold increase in population. Again, India's population is one of the biggest factor why do we have poverty in the first place. We go on increasing the population, there was no control on the population here. We see that people are not even aware about the kind of awareness they should have in terms of population control. People are shy, people are not even known, or other people have very less knowledge about how to control the population in the first place, what exactly is needed, because that is just the reason why we turned out to be 125 billion. We are competing with China in terms of population, only in terms of population, but in terms of growth, in terms of any other thing, we are still very behind. We need to go ahead. Despite China having the second largest population in the world, they still have a per capita income of more time, or rather 5 times more than compared to India. When we think about this, we understand if China can do that, why can't India do the same thing here? So in India, even in 2014, about 47% of the working population was engaged in agriculture. Can you imagine? 47% of the total population was engaged only in agriculture activities. However, its contribution to the national income was only 77%, or rather 17% here. If 47% of the whole income is engaged in agriculture, do you expect an output only of 17% here? That will be not even close to the percentage of people who are engaged in that business. Even if 1% gives around, if 1% of the population gives around 1% of the effort, that would give out an output of 47%, which would still match the number of people engaged in that work. So if 47% of people are engaged in that agriculture process, why not have an output which is double that thing? Why not have an output which is equivalent to that thing? Why to have an output which is not even 1/4 of that specific population thing, or rather 1/3 of that specific thing that we are discussing about? So according to, or rather this was according to the World Bank data that was published here. Now the next phase speaks about how exactly huge dependence of population on agriculture is that, and how exactly it is affecting us. It shows that this is very low productivity per person in agriculture. Of course, 47% of the engagement is done and only 17% is the output. We can call this as very low productivity. High engagement but low productivity leads to no development. That's the touchline, or rather that's the baseline of any organization. This can be called as no development here. This is what you need to understand when it comes to 47% of people and 17% of products, 17% of details that were not matched here. Further, the expansion of the industry was not sufficient to attract the labor force from the primary activities. However, when we speak about expansion of industries was not sufficient to attract the labor force from the primary activities. Hence, India is still lagging on this front. If we speak about agricultural people, the efficiency that they show there didn't attract, or rather it didn't attract them even if there was industrial expansion. Even if there we had industrial expansion in the first place, it didn't lead to any kind of attraction for these people, because these people are more keen, or rather they are still in their comfort zone, and no one wants to get out of that comfort zone in the first place. So if you are not willing to go out of the comfort zone in the first place, how exactly will you be developing, or rather how exactly do you expect that you will develop in any of the cases? That's one of the biggest problem. It's a will issue that we have. The next concept is heavy population pressure. Understand the fact, 125 billion people. The number itself is self-explanatory. This is the situation of India, 125 billion as per the recent census that we had. Indian economy is facing the problem of population explosion. It is clear evident, or rather it is clearly evident from the total population of India, which was 121.8 crores as per 2011 census. As per 2014 census, it was 125 billion of people. That means 125 crores. 121.8 crores in 2011. It is the second highest populated country, China being the first. China being the first one in 2011, second highest was India. Although China being the first one, the per capita income is 5 times as compared to India here. Imagine the difference. The main problem in India is the high level of birth rates coupled with falling level of death rates. So the death rates are going down, which is absolutely fine. It shouldn't be the case that the death rate should go up. But along with that, the birth rate should be controlled at any given cost. The fast rate of growing population necessitates a higher rate of economic growth in order to maintain the same standard of living. So, if the fast rate of birth, or rather there is a growth rate that is going on at an exorbitant fast level, then in that case, to maintain the same economic order, we need to make sure that every time that same economic order is maintained, we need to have a specific level of economic growth. To mention that thing, or rather why is this needed, is because whatever standard of living is there, we need to keep that standard of living stagnant. Just because the population is increasing, we cannot decrease the standard of living because of the population. So this is one of the factor that you need to understand. So population cannot decide the standard of living. Standard of living should be stagnant, should be constant. It should be only increasing and not decreasing because of the population here. This is what we need to think of. So the next part speaks about, again, to maintain a rapid growing population, the requirements of food, clothing, shelter, medicine, schooling, etc. all rise. To maintain the growing standard of living, we also need to figure out that we need food, we need clothing, we need shelter, medicine, schooling, etc. All of this increases exorbitantly. Thus, or rather, this is a rising population imposes a great economic burden upon the country. So, because of these many people in India, we can see that already the economy is completely going down. This increase in population is adding further to it. So, it doesn't make any sense of producing more people, or rather developing or understanding about the developing concept when you cannot control the basic population growth. You need to first control the population growth in order to make sure that the economic burden is lessened and you don't just add up to more of that burden here. The failure to sustain the living standards keeps the poor and the underdeveloped countries poor and underdeveloped itself. If we fail on this specific part, whereby we need to control these things, we need to control the growth rate in the first place, no other country will be developed if at all there is no control on this. So the developed country will be only, or rather developing country will stay under that stage itself. Poor people will stay poor. There is no definition, or rather there is no growth that can be expected. There is no richness that can be expected here. Poor people will stay poor in this case itself. There is no chance that the poor people will develop into, or rather a better human being, or rather it will be changed into a richer section. It cannot happen unless and until you don't show the willingness to go ahead and control the population in the first place. Existence of chronic unemployment and underemployment. This is one of the major important factors for a developing country still being in the stage of developing itself and not being developed, even if the economy is growing at a faster rate here. The huge unemployed working population in India is another important feature of Indian economy. Imagine, this is known as a feature of Indian economy, whereby we proudly say that huge unemployed working population. It's a huge unemployed working population, unemployed and working. People of these ages are able to work. They are capacity, or rather we can say that they are capacitized to make sure that they work and they earn their money, but they are still unemployed, maybe of different reasons, because of proper schooling, or rather no proper schooling here, no proper degree here, no proper skills here, or maybe unwillingness is one of the major important reasons why people don't work these days. Even if they have the specific degree, specific skill set, the pay isn't that good, etc., etc. There may be different or several reasons that we can be dealing with, but in that case we need to make sure that how much willing we are to earn money and how exactly we are willing to hatch on the opportunity that we have here. Now in India, labor is an abundant factor. I'll mention cheap labor is an abundant factor. India is very known for cheap labor. So every time you want cheap labor, you can move to India and get people hired here. As a result, it is very difficult to provide gainful employment to the entire working population. Hence, because of these reasons, it is very, very difficult to provide gainful employment, because the vacancies will be less. The vacancies will be less. Do you think we have 125 billion of vacancies around the world? No, we don't. Around the country? No, we don't. So, out of these 125 billion vacancies, even if we have to segregate them into 18 to 40, we understand that this 18 to 40 is very, very low. So as we discussed that the population, or rather the pressure on population, or rather pressure of population has led to few more details. Unemployment is one of the thing. Now rapid growth of population coupled with inadequate growth of secondary and tertiary occupations are responsible for the occurrences of chronic unemployment and underemployment in our country. Between the people of 18 to 40, or rather if we can say that population growth has led to so many issues here, is because with every population grow, or rather every time the population increases, it is not necessary that the jobs will also increase. The jobs are going to remain stagnant. Whoever grabs his foot, whoever catches it first, it's their job. And if people don't leave that job, there is no other job opportunity that is going to be created, because jobs are not expanding. Jobs are fully controlled. They know that there is no reason for them to be expanded in any probable way, because the companies run on a planned basis. Humans don't. Humans absolutely don't go ahead and understand that how population control can actually save a lot of job, can actually save so many issues. We have so many number of issues that can be actually controlled only if we figure out that population control has to be done. If population is controlled by any matter, by any sense, we as Indians won't have to look behind in terms of economic growth. We are very, very self-sufficed in our comfort zone, that we don't look beyond that specific aspect. We need to look forward that India as a country has the capacity, the potential to be such a super strong world, but no, we are still lagging behind our comfort zone. We don't want to step out of that comfort zone, and we just want to look for ourselves. And as a country, that is the detrimental factor, because when people in such countries have such kind of mentality, it is not going to help as a country, or rather it is not going to help the country to develop in any sense. We are just going to blabber about economic development, we're just going to blabber about all the political issues that we have, and we're just going to let it go as and how it is supposed to be. But in order to develop, or rather in order to face, or rather to be a developed country, people need to give their support to the government. People need to give their support to every government that comes into the picture, because only then all these things. And the basic support that you can give is control your population. That is one of the basic thing. Government is not going to come and control your population. It is not going to stop you from doing anything, but it is you who need to understand what exactly population. Imagine the kind of traffic that you face on the roads. Earlier, in the earlier days, you never had so much of traffic, you never had so many people taking their cars out. Today, if you have to go somewhere out, or if you have to go somewhere at 10 a.m. and you need to figure out how exactly you can reach there by 7 a.m. Why exactly this 3 hours gap or 3 hours difference? Is because you want to avoid the traffic. So if we are not even capable of leaving by 8:30 or 9 to reach some place at 10, we have to be capable, or rather we have to be planned enough to leave at 7 for a meeting at 10. Understand how much difference it is, and what is the waste of time that we have here, just to make sure that we reach, or rather to avoid the traffic in the first place. So if that has to be done, why not control the population in the first place? It's a simple term, right? It's a simple solution that we have. Control the population, everything will be fine. You still run behind the population, nothing is going to be fine, nothing is going to work out here. So that's how exactly it works here in every situation. Now, in India, unemployment is the result of deficiency of capital as well. In India, capital deficiency is one of the major important thing that we have to deal with. So whenever it comes to capital deficiency, we figure out that underemployment or unemployment has been a part of it. Moreover, large number of force, or rather large number of labor force is engaged in the agriculture sector of Indian economy, then what is really justified in terms of GDP contribution of this sector. So majority, if you see that 47% of the people are engaged in agriculture, which is not even giving 17% return. So why put all that energy into agriculture in the first place? Why cannot we develop such skills that can help India in building an economy of their own? Why can't we have major people, or rather these skilled peoples, be trained for something else, some other job, some other thing that can help them earn more as well, and that can help the industry to be built as well? Why can't we do that? This has reduced the marginal product of agricultural labors either to a negligible amount or to zero. So because of these 47% of people only engaged in agriculture, the marginal productivity, it's just like a simple economic term. More the supply, demand is going to go down. If you cut down the supply, the demand is going to go up. So we as Indians, we don't even realize, or we don't even recognize that whatever theoretical that we are studying here, we are not even able to put that into practical use. We are not even able, or rather capacitized, to make sure that whatever thinking that we have, whatever knowledge that we have, we are capable of putting that knowledge into practical usage. This is just for theory purpose that you put in your exams, and that's the end of it. Do we even know how exactly we need to go ahead when it comes to development of a country, or is it that only experienced people, experienced politicians will be knowing about these details? These are the things that you should ask yourself as a youth person, or rather as a young person. These are the things that you need to understand how exactly things need to be modified here. So this led to the existence of disguised unemployment in India in agriculture sector. Of course, if the marginal productivity of that specific sector is going below negative, how do you expect that it can lead you to something which is more beneficial if you put all your eggs in one basket of agriculture itself? How exactly do you think that people who are already there working in agriculture, what do you think? You'll go there and you'll make a name of your own just because you're doing agriculture? No, it is not. You need to understand where you are good at, what are your skills, how you can develop certain skills, and make sure that you go into some diversified occupations. That is because that will lead you, or the main motive of every Indian citizen should be to earn revenue via different sources, and not just be strict, or rather restricted to only one source of income, because one source of income will give you poverty. That is the ratio. One source of income will give you only poverty. You will be also in loans. You will be completely into liabilities. That is the only thing. There is no other source. If you don't have any other source of income, you are going to be screwed by every other means here. So this is what you need to understand. If we go on to the next part, also adding to this, we have understood that the urban areas, the problem of educated unemployment has also taken a serious turn. Why exactly this is? Because as we discussed, increase in the number of population doesn't increase the number of jobs. So no matter how much ever education you take, if you're not, or rather there are no jobs, what are you going to do with that education? What exactly are you going to do by taking all such education when there are no jobs, when there are zero jobs? What are you taking the education for? That's the question that you need to ask. So to make sure that the education is worth enough taking, create jobs in the first place. The Planning Commission has estimated that during 2004 and 5, the rate of unemployment has risen from, or rather risen to 8.36% from 7.32% in 1999-2000. So in 1999 and 2000, the rate of unemployment was 7.32%, which went to 8.36% in 0405. Imagine this is the growth. The growth in negative factors is very high as compared to growth in positive factors. Hence, India is a downward going economy here. There is no doubt that unemployment exists in greater degree in urban areas, the rural areas also suffer from the problem of unemployment. If this is the situation of urban areas where people are educated, where people know how to get their things done, imagine the wrath of people in the rural areas where they don't even know how exactly education looks like, how exactly education has to be taken, what is the implementation of education, what is the need, what is the importance, how exactly you can put things together and get things done. If people who are staying in urban area are not able to secure jobs, how can we exactly expect people from rural area to get things done? That's the question. That's the thing, or rather, that's the solution that we should be looking out for. Because this question may be just one single line, the solution is really huge and a long term process which requires a lot of time and constant efforts needs to be done here. Now let's go to table 6.9, whereby we understand all India rural and urban unemployment rates in 2015-16. This is as per 3 years earlier status. Rural male sector, which was unemployed, was 4.2, female was 7.1, transgender was 2.1, and person, or rather average person, was 5.1. Urban 3.3 in male, 12.1 in female. Imagine the number, 12.1 percentage. Rural females are 7.8% unemployed. Urban females who know how to get things done are 12.1% unemployed. Transgender 10.3, total averaging out to 4.9, just 2 points, 0.2% less than rural here. Rural plus urban 4.0 male, 8.7 female, 4.3 transgender, and 5% is female or other persons here. Now, this has been taken note. Unemployment figures are based on US Principal Status UPS approach. So, this is what you need to understand. Imagine the kind of mentality that will be going through as an Indian economy. How exactly do we expect, or rather, the question itself, that we expect Indian economy to grow without doing anything from our side is a hilarious question that every individual asks the government here. So, it is not that we can blame the government to be, or rather to be the reason for this situation in India, because it is not just the government, it is the people as well who chose that government and reluctant enough to go ahead and complete their own responsibility. So if we complete our own responsibility, that's when we can go ahead and question the other person. But if we don't practice what we are preaching, that doesn't make sense here. Now, the next part refers to slow improvement in the rate of capital formation. Capital formation is also one of the major important thing, because for everything, every development, what is required? Money. Capital is required to go ahead and make sure that things get done within time and deadlines aren't missed here. So the basic characteristics of Indian economy was the existence of capital deficiency. Capital deficiency was one of the major important factors why things didn't work out for India. However, in the recent years, there is a slow and steady improvement in India's rate of capital formation, which is reflected in table 6.10. So, in the recent years, we have seen that the capital formation is slowly building up. In a country like India, where the rate of population growth is 1.6% during 0 through or rather 2000 to 2005, and about 6.4% investment is required to offset the additional burden imposed by the increasing population. So, for every 1.6% that growth was recorded in 2000 to 2005, we need to also record, or rather we need to also figure out that 6.4% of growth is required to offset, or rather to nullify this growth of 5 years growth has to be nullified by 6.4% growth. 6.4% growth is not just a normal growth, it's an abnormal growth that has to be taken just because our population is increasing exorbitantly. So, thus, India requires as high as 14% level of gross capital formation so that it may cover depreciation and maintain the same standard of living. So, if you have to maintain the same standard of living, we need to figure out that a growth rate of 14% is required in the first place. Imagine the kind of growth that is required. 14% of growth is required just to make sure that this standard of living is set. If that is not done, the standard of living goes down, and it will keep going down if that much of capital, and it keeps on piling up. Okay, this is not just 14% that has been derived as a number. This 14% would have been piled up because of the previous population growth as well. So this is what you need to understand. Now the next part states that a higher rate of gross capital formation alone can pave the way for economic growth to improve the standard of living of the population. It is indeed a pleasure to note that the gross domestic saving GDS in 2014 reached a high level of 29%, and the gross capital formation was as high as 31.4%. So these are the statistical data that has been provided here. A higher rate of gross capital formation is the only way that can pave the way, or rather it can actually figure out how exactly we can reach towards an economy which will be self-sufficing, and that is done, or rather that can be done by capital formation. Unless and until this cannot be mentioned or this cannot be done, nothing will be made sure, or rather nothing will be diligent enough to be completed. Now the table here states about capital, or rather gross capital formation here. Now this gives you GCF, that is gross capital formation, and GDS, that is gross domestic saving, as a percentage of gross domestic product. Now it has been a comparison that is done between US, India and China. So in 1990 or 2014, US was at 18%, which went down to 90.3% here. This is the definition, or rather this is the statistical data that has been given. India was at 24% and it went to 13, or rather 31.4%. China was 35, it went to 47.7. Gross domestic saving went from 16 to 16.3, 23 in 1990 and 29 in India, and 38 went down to 50.4. China took a huge leap here. So these are the details that have been provided here. Now inequality in wealth distribution is also one of the major important factor. Oxfam's report An Economy for the 99% 2017 shows that the generation, or rather the gap between the rich and the poor, is far greater than had been feared. As per this report, 8 men own the same wealth as the 3.6 billion people who make up the poorest half of the humanity. So, 8 people hold the wealth that could be actually the total of 3.6 billion people. This is the kind of wealth development, or rather wealth distribution here. Can you imagine? Only 8 people have that much of wealth that can be the total wealth of, or rather that can be compared to the total wealth of 3.6 billion. How exactly can we say that this is equal distribution of wealth here? It's a question. Ask yourself and figure out how to go ahead with the solutions of this. Data on the distribution of global wealth, particularly in India and China, indicates that the poorest half of the world has less wealth and that had been previously thought. In India, the richest 1% of Indians have 58% of total India's wealth. 1% of Indians in India have 58% of the total wealth. So the balance, if we have to calculate, let's just go into the calculations and figure out the numbers that we have to deal with. So 99% of people are poor, that we can say, or the other we can say in terms of only in terms of wealth distribution. 1% have around 58% of 1% of people have around 58% of India's total wealth here. That means the balance 42% can be distributed between total of 99% of people. Can you call that this is an equal distribution of wealth? Of course not. Now, the next part refers to 57 billionaires have the same amount of wealth as the bottom 70% of India. So 70% of Indian people is compared with 57 billionaires. 57 billionaires. So 57 number of people are billionaires, and those people have a wealth that can be compared to 70% of India's population here. The CEO of India's top information firm earns around 416 times the salary of a typical employee of his company. So imagine the kind of wealth distribution that we have. A salary of a CEO of India's top firm, he earns around 416 times as compared to the salary of a typical employee of his own company. Imagine the distribution, or rather, can you figure out how equally the wealth has been distributed? It's a sarcasm, just understand that. Now, the next part refers to poor quality of human capital. Indian economy is suffering from the problem of poor capital of, or rather poor quality of capital here. If we enlarge the definition of capital formation to include the use of any resources that enhances the productive capacity, then besides physical capacity or other physical capital, the knowledge and the training of the population will also form a part of the capital. Hence, the expenditure on education, basically what is very much required, skill formation, again one of the important things, research and improvement in the health are not included, or rather included in the human capital here. Under United Nations Development Program, UNDP as known as, countries have been ranked on the basis of the HDI, that is Human Development Index. The Human Development Index itself is very low as compared to India. The human development of capital, rather human development in India is very low as compared to the capital formation, and hence the issue arises here. The next part leads to the index is based on the life expectancy, educational attainment and per capita income. So how does this HDI works? It works on three factors. First one will be life expectancy, second one will be educational attainment, and third one will be the per capita income. Per capita income is anyway low, that we also know here. It is an alternative indicator of socio-economic development of the country. HDI gives you how socially and economically developed your country is. As per the Human Development Report, India ranks 130 out of 188 countries. So we are on the 130th rank. We call ourselves as growing economy, and we are on the 130th rank out of 188 countries that we have. Now, India's HDI value for 2014 was 0.609. India has improved its ranking by 6 places from 2009, or rather between 2009 and 2014. Table 6.11 shows the comparison to other nations in the BRIC's grouping. India has the lowest rank with Russia at 50. Now, Brazil is at 75, China at 90, and South Africa at 116 in terms of the Human Development Index here. So, here HDI 2014, charge in rank or the change in rank, GNI per capita, LEB, expected years of schooling, mean years of schooling, etc. has been mentioned. Can you see India is at 130th rank here, and the change in rank is only 6 places, which has been mentioned. Expected years of schooling is 11.7 years, the mean years, the average year that happens is 5.7. Expected years in Russian Federation is 14, but the average still happens, which is close to 14, that is 12. We are not even half of it. Now, compared to any other, South Africa, take South Africa, 13.6 it has been mentioned, 9.9 is the average that is coming out, which is still better. 15.7 is the ranking, or rather that has been mentioned, expected is of schooling, but 7.7, they are still covering 50% or rather more than 50% of it. Hence, we are considered as a backward nation by any means, because we are the solely responsible people who have made the conditions like that. Low level of technology is something that you need to also understand. Prevalence of low level of technology is one of the important characteristics of developing countries like India. Since new techniques are expensive and require a considerable degree of skill for their application in production, the twin requirements for the absorption of new technology are availability of capital and training of adequate number of skilled personnel. Now, low technology is something that we need to discuss whenever we speak about bringing up development. Low technology, or rather technological advancement, requires two things. First is capital and the next is skills. So this twin requirement can absolutely build up the development of any economy at a faster rate. So basically it won't be just for the namesake faster rate, but it will help in building at a faster rate as well, and that will be a mean response here. Now, however, the deficiency of physical and human capital in terms of illiteracy and the absence of skilled labor force are the major hurdles in the spread of technology in economy. So because of all these details, or rather if we speak about skilled labor force which is not available with us, when we speak about major hurdles, so these are the major hurdles that we have discussed here. Now, the next part refers to low level of technology again. Now, let us understand the Indian economy also suffers from this basic weakness that majority of the farmers are too poor to even buy the essential inputs such as improved seeds, fertilizers, insecticides, and machineries like harvesters, tractors, sowing machines. Further, majority of the enterprises are also micro and small enterprises, and it beyond, or rather it is beyond the mean for them to employ modern and more productive techniques. So farmers, in simple sense, if I have to term this whole para, farmers are not even capable of buying good equipments, good techniques here. Second, the employment that is done, or rather if they're dealing into something which is very micro and small enterprise, that they don't feel the need of bringing in tractors, bringing in harvesters, bringing in modern technology into these things, because there is no funding available in the first place. And even if they have that funding, it is not going to reap them anything, because the standard of that specific thing is small and micro. That's the reason. Now, lack of basic, or rather access to basic amenities, is one of the major problem again. So these are the basic problems that we are facing in terms of development of Indian economy here. According to the census of India 2011, around 7% of India's population, that is 650 million, lives in rural and slum areas. Only 46.6% of households in India have access to drinking water. Imagine the wrath. Water within the premises. A far lower 43.5% of households have access to tap water. Similarly, only 46.9% hold or of the household have toilets in their household premises. This is what we call as developing economy. This is why we term ourselves as developing and not developed. We don't even have access to the basic amenities. No tap water, no proper toilet, no water in some areas. People live in rural and slum areas. What exactly is the economy developing, or rather how can we call this as the fastest growing economy when the basic amenities of people are not even fulfilled in the first place? Now, the next part refers to this results in developing less strength to fight diseases, and is also partly responsible for low level of efficiency of Indian workers. If these basic amenities are not provided, people are going to die. There is no efficiency that can be expected out of them. Further, dedicated, skilled health personnel are a rather prerequisite for efficient and effective delivery of health services. We are speaking about health services. The person who is giving out these services should be healthy enough to give out, or rather to make sure that these people are in terms of developing countries. Now, however, the availability of such personnel to meet various needs of health sector is a huge challenge in India. An evaluation study of the National Rural Health Mission in 2011, conducted in 7 selected states, namely UP, MP, Jharkhand, Odisha, Assam, Jammu and Kashmir, and Tamil Nadu, assessed the levels of shortfalls faced by some of these states in health personnel. Imagine When we speak about government hospitals, we don't have that much of amenities there, despite it is known as a government hospital. Hence, people move to private only if, or rather, even if they have to pay higher price there, because government hospitals are not even capable of handling people in the first place. How exactly they'll be treating people? So that's the case scenario here. There was a 95% shortage of skilled health personnel in Jharkhand, around 80% in MP, 70% in UP. Assam reported only 11% shortage, while Tamil Nadu did not report any shortage at all. So, can you see the north side, north and northeast side have almost around 95% shortage? That means doctors aren't available in the hospitals. How exactly do you think a country is going to develop here? Now, this is the table. In UP, required was 2060 specialist, available was only 618. Shortfall 70%. MP 1080, available is only 220. Shortfall 80%. Jharkhand 776, available 40. Shortfall is 95%. Assam 412 people are required. 365 are still available. 11%. The lowest one basically. That is how exactly it is working. Now the demographic characteristics. The demographic characteristics of India are not at all satisfactory. Rather, these are associated with high density of population, a smaller proportion of the population in the working age group of 50 to 60 years, and a comparatively larger population in the minor age group of 0 to 15. According to 2011 census, the density of population in India was 382 per square kilometer. That means within per square kilometer we can fit 382. So we had that many people within 1 square kilometer itself. That is the kind of population. This should be very, very less. It is very, very high as of now. As compared to the with world density of 41, can you imagine? 41 should be the ideal number, or rather, it is as per the world. We are at 382. How do we expect growth? How do we expect amenities to be provided to these many people? Hence, as I said, population control is the solution to every other thing. That's how exactly it should be. Now, the next part refers to even in China, the density is nearly 123 per square kilometer. Again, China is the first one, right? China is the first country to be heavily populated. Still, they have around 123 per square kilometer density here, as compared to ours being 382. Again, as per 2011 census, 29.5% of total population is in the age group of 0 to 14. 62% is in the working age group of 15 to 59, and 8% is in the age of 60 and above. So, all these show that very dependency, or the other dependency burden of a population is very high. Because if we see that 0 to 14 is around 16, or rather 0 to 14 has around 29%. Okay, let's take an example. From 15 to 59, it is somewhere around 62%, which is a working group, and 60 plus is around 8%. So 29 and 8%, the total of these two dependencies is only on these 62% people. So the dependency rate is very high here, because these people, the age group of 0 to 14, government doesn't provide them anything. People who are 60 plus above, government doesn't provide them anything. So whatever has to be dealt for these two people have to be dealt by only one group, which is 15 to 59. Hence, that is the situation whereby people are just burdened to earn money. There is no skill, there is no creativity that can happen here. Underutilization of natural resources again is one of the major important factor which is leading to slow development. What exactly it is? In respect of natural endowment in India is considered a very rich country. Various type of natural resources such as land, water, minerals, forests and power resources are available in sufficient quantity in the various parts of the country. However, due to its very inherent problem like inaccessible regions, primitive techniques and shortage of capital such as huge resource remains largely underutilized. So because of all these reasons, all our natural resources which can be easily accessed, which can be easily utilized to make sure that things go out smoothly, we are not able to do that. Why? Is because it can be either the reason that it is inaccessible regions, it is the primitive techniques, the old techniques that are being used, shortage of capital. All such reasons can be one of the major factor here. Now, until recently, India was not in the position to develop even 5% of total hydro potential power of the country. Until recently, After 67 years, or rather after 71 years of independence here, we weren't able to generate even 5% of hydro technological power here. That's the growth that we're talking about. Now, the next part refers to lack of infrastructure. Again, lack of infrastructure is one of the basic reasons. Lack of infrastructure facilities is one of the serious problems from which Indian economy is suffering till today. These infrastructure facilities include transportation and communication facilities, electricity generation and distribution, banking and credit facilities, health and education institutions, etc. The two most vital sectors, that is agriculture and industry, could not make much headway in the absence of proper infrastructure facilities in the country here. Moreover, due to the absence of proper infrastructure facilities, development potential of industrial region of the country largely remains underutilized here. There are some major developmental issues of Indian economy. These issues, or rather these, whatever we discussed right now, these are some of the major developmental issues that we have discussed. These issues need to be resolved in order to unlock full potential of the economy. If that is not done, addressing this issue would surely result in the faster growth of economy, both on the economic front as well as on the social front. So this is what you need to develop, or rather this is what you need to look into whenever you have to discuss about what exactly are the issues with India, why India is not developing. This is what needs to be done. So this is all that we have when it comes to the developmental issues India is facing, and that's all for the video. Thank you.